I said to him, look, it would mean the world to me if I could drive this. And he's like, yeah, no drums. And I was like, okay.
Welcome back to the Torque Motorsport Show, bringing you behind the scenes and under the hood of motorsports and video games. I'm your host, Billy, the COO here at Grease Monkey Games. We have Arran Potter back on the show, the founder and director.
Hello, everyone.
And special guest, Paul Maric.
Hello, how are you guys?
Very excited to have you. You're the first person outside of drifting that we've had on the show.
Like a bit of drifting, so
All right.
don't count me out.
We'll include you. Actually, we have some questions about that later. But yeah, we've just been chatting and showing you around. Have you ever been in a game studio before?
No, and it's seriously cool because I came from an IT background, so I used to play lots of games when I was a kid. We used to go to LAN parties and do other sort of very nerdy, non-girl related stuff like that. And so I always wondered how games were done, and actually seeing everyone here working and doing things is pretty awesome. Yeah, I love it.
Yeah, and half the team's working off site too, just remoting in, like they're like robots, but it's pretty cool.
I also wonder how games are done too. So if you find that answer, that'd be great.
And how they explode, like you look at stuff like World of Warcraft, Counter-Strike, all that sort of stuff. It all just exploded. There's no rhyme or reason. You could make another game that looks the exact same and it just doesn't work. It just seems once you get a cult following, everything just takes off.
Yeah, like a snowball.
It's a fun industry to be in for sure.
Yep.
Like I love coming to work. I love it. It's exciting. It's super creative, and if you're able to make a living of it, then awesome.
If not, bad luck.
Yeah, exactly.
Then just go back and live in your garage and make games. Yeah.
You're very entrepreneurial yourself.
Yes.
Like you've started multiple businesses, mostly in cars and vehicles and journalism. But I actually wanted to ask about your background as an engineer, because I think there's a lot of underrated skills as an engineer, like dissecting things, pulling things apart, and like solving creative problems. I'm curious how you think that like affected your success in business.
Yeah, look, it's interesting because when I was younger, I was into computers and that kind of stuff. And when I finished high school, I had to do a year of work before I was eligible for youth allowance because my family wasn't very wealthy. We immigrated from Yugoslavia, came here with nothing, and we kind of grew up in a unit with no money. So for me, it was important to get a job, and for my parents, it was for me to get a degree. So while I was doing that year off after high school, I worked in IT at schools and did that sort of stuff. And around that same time, I wanted to blend my love for IT and websites with cars, and I started my own sort of car website where I just wrote about car stuff. And Dad said to me, this is going to sound bad, but Dad said to me, "Don't waste your time on that website. You need to do your schoolwork."
And this was car advice?
Well, it was just prior to car advice. I started a website called The Garage, and basically, at the same time that I finished up my year of working for youth allowance, I started my engineering degree, but I started in telecoms engineering. And basically halfway through the first year of that, I got in touch with the guy that started car advice. And he was basically 6 months old. I was at the point with my website where it was growing and I needed to hire people. I said to him, look, what if you take all of my content in return for an equity stake in car advice, and then we'll grow that together. And he agreed to that, and we did that.
Nice.
And at the same time, I switched over to mechanical engineering. And to your point there about engineering, it's what I found with engineering is a lot of the stuff you learn at uni, you don't actually ever use. And one of the lecturers who I thought was the biggest flog at the time turned out to actually be quite correct when he said that what you learn in engineering is how to become a manager and better understand what your employees are doing. And that's what I've learned from it, really managing people and then looking at problems and going back to first principles. And that's helped me a lot, especially now with cars moving to electrification, understanding what is actually going on beneath the skin of a car as opposed to just reading off a spec sheet and just believing everything they tell you.
Yeah, no, that's super interesting. But you were quite young when you were doing this garage thing. Was it like 17?
17. Actually, when I was doing it, I thought I'd send an email to Mitsubishi and ask them for press release information on the 380 at the time, which was the car they were about to launch. And I got an email back saying, oh, look, here's some information. The car's not launching until the end of the year. Would you like to like drive some of our cars. And I'm like, basically they lined me up with my first press car. And a press car, for people who don't know, is basically a media vehicle that is distributed amongst all the other journalists. And we evaluate those cars for a period of a week. You return the car once you're done. And I then realised that these motoring journalists were getting free cars to drive around in. So basically, I said to her, would love to take one. Didn't explain that I was still 17. The day after I got my license, I went to pick up my first press car.
That's amazing.
And I engineered a little thing in my license. So when I flipped my wallet open, there was a clear cover over my license. And because in Victoria, the P-plate license has a red strip on it, or did at the time. So I engineered this system where I would put sticky tape over it. And when I showed them my license, you couldn't see the red strip. So they didn't think that I was, one day over 18. So yeah, that was how that all sort of started, and we sort of grew the other businesses from there. And since then, I've also run other random stuff. Like I ran a travel website, a car rental website. Actually, at one point as well, I ran a social media boosting company. And the way that it worked was you would come to my site and you could buy followers and likes and video views. And I actually, during that process, I was using a bot farm in India or Russia or wherever it was. And during that process, I actually was selling followers to the bank of, actually, probably not sure which bank it is, but
a bank.
And I was like, holy shit, they're actually buying followers. So it was just really fascinating.
We did not condone that in any way, and we did not do any.
But also, if you want to just hook us up with the web.
But that's the thing I actually discovered, how many people have fake followers. No, we're diverging here.
Yeah.
So many people have fake followers, and I discovered a method of determining how people were using services like mine to grow their followings. And even today, I can still see some of these influencers who have just the worst engagement, but incredible amounts of followers. And it's kind of a stupid thing because you don't provide value to them. Everyone can see through it, and now marketers are smart enough to know what is and isn't real. So, yeah.
Interesting. Yeah. Relating to that, I was actually going to ask you later, but creating value and the content, like I imagine that's something you learned very early on. So you can't just, it's not about what does the number give you, right? It's just something you can show off to your friends, but creating the value that drives people back to actually like engaging with your brand and trusting the brand. Now on your YouTube channel, you've got like over 300 YouTube videos of yourself reviewing the cars and building that kind of relationship. So when did that kind of click, or is it always there?
Look, for us as content experts, when we left Car Advice, we basically sold that business to Nine and basically sort of left that business and decided to start CarExpert. And with CarExpert, we wanted to go back. Our thing was go back to making great content again. What we've discovered is that if you are authentic in terms of what you do and what you give to your customer, they will keep coming back. So it was really important for us in the early days of CarExpert to be open and honest with everyone, to be authentic with our content, and to make sure that we were delivering value to the person visiting the site. Because ultimately, for us, at the time we weren't making money off it. We had to raise a significant amount of money to launch the site, but it meant that you had to deliver some value. And that flowed on with YouTube, where we wanted to make sure that we were open and honest with everything that we were doing. We were assessing cars on their value, because ultimately a car is the second biggest purchase someone will make after a house. Put myself in the shoes of mum and dad, and if they were to go out and buy a car on the recommendation of someone who was getting paid by a manufacturer at a sprocket, I would not want them paying all that money for that car. So, and that's why our channel grew so quickly. We're now the most watched automotive review channel in Australia. We net more views each month generally than all of our competitors combined.
Wow.
So it's been this huge growth, and we're now looking at how we can diversify the content that we do on YouTube even further. But yeah, it's the same in any business, really. You just need to be authentic and honest, and people will keep coming back and recommending you to everyone else.
Yeah, and I think it says a lot that you're the face of the channel too, like being a co-founder of the business and like people seeing that. It's not someone who's just there being paid monthly or fortnightly or whatever. There's a lot of investment there, and I can tell there's a lot of passion there, and you care about the content. So
yeah, and you also just need to empower your employees. Like in our business, everyone that took the risk with us early on and left, because we took a lot of people out of the Car Advice business, a lot of people who joined us from there, we gave them an equity stake in the business. So it was important for us to give someone more than just a salary, because at the end of the day, if you're getting just a salary, at 5:30 you close your laptop, you go home, and you don't care about anything. Whereas if you know that the harder you put in, how do you work every day? And the more you put in every day, that there is potentially going to be a return down the track, then that's great news. And for us at the moment, we've transformed our mentality around the website from being a publishing company to being a technology platform for transacting on cars. And that's going to mean a much bigger valuation when it does finally come time to list or sell the business.
So you're thinking of listing, are you?
Yeah, look, 2024 is our aim for listing. One of the things that I've learned during this process, we started the website like probably 3 months before COVID hit. And we were in the process of a capital raise, and we thought, we're pretty much, because we need money and we're not going to be able to raise anything. We already gave contracts to all these people that came over. Like, we were really concerned. And what we discovered during that time is you have a lot of savvy investors out there who know when and how to back a good thing. We had the track record of Car Advice that ended up selling at a final valuation of 65 million to 9. Wow. And they shut it down earlier this year, which I thought was just hilarious.
Wow.
But yeah, they understood that we had the ability to do it again. And what we discovered during that process, we took a lot of advice from our investors. Some of our investors are billionaires who don't want to be named, but one in particular who was happy to be named is his name's Lawrence Escalante, and he basically started a gambling company effectively, and over COVID, his company grew to doing around $4 billion in revenue and just under $500 million in profit. He has transformed that business into something completely different, and it was on the back of taking risks and listening to the people that invested in his business. So we took a lot of that on board and realised that just being a publisher isn't going to be the way to go, and that's why we're now moving towards that marketplace model, and we think that will provide value when it comes to listing.
Cool. Sounds awesome.
Yeah, it sounds like a hectic next few years in the run-up. Like,
definitely, yeah.
A lot of behind the scenes.
A bit like you guys, like it's constantly happening. Like, you're never resting, and to me, I enjoy that because I love just being in charge of my own destiny and working as hard as I can to make something of it. And I can see here with you guys, it's the same story. Like, everyone is working hard to just get stuff done. You know, there is no knock off at 5 p.m. You are literally at it all the time.
Yeah, I definitely get that sense that and the way that you run the company is like, you know, taking on the big guys, like entrepreneurial startup kind of vibes, you know, doing different things, testing things out and being creative, I guess, and creating like a meaningful life, which is very meta, but I can see that like in the way you're talking and the stuff you put out. So that's really cool.
Yeah, and that's the thing. It's like, regardless of what business you run, you need to look at it from the point of view that if you're making a difference in someone's life, your business is serving a purpose. And regardless of what that business is, if you do it right, you are going to get that return eventually. And if you look at someone like Elon Musk as an example, what he did with Tesla was he went down the path of creating an electric car company. You know, it's fine, a lot of people have done it before, but what he's done is added value in the process, made life easier. So for me, we have a Tesla, and I know that I can go to my app and do everything with that car. Other car manufacturers, they have apps, they're all shit.
Yeah.
So Tesla does that really well. So he is adding value to my life. So I will pick a Tesla over another type of car because for me, tech is important and I want to be able to do stuff with it. So, you know, if you have that mentality in anything that you do, it is that way of being better than your competitors. And your competitors, regardless of how big they are, you can always take them on. Like, the bigger they are, the lazier they are.
Yeah, if you want to disrupt the market, you have to go in very hard, and I think Tesla did that exceptionally well. So like, I actually own a Tesla, and the software updates is just amazing. Like, I previously owned a BMW, and you had to spend hundreds of dollars to update your maps. You know what I mean? And Tesla, just get in, it updates overnight. So yeah, they're definitely winning on that front. And I also think that you mentioned electrification, to change the subject to be talking more about cars. There is a big shift, and I think with the electrification, there's so many benefits that people don't really realize. Like, it's not only financially viable, environmentally, it's also safe. Like, the Tesla is one of the safest cars on the road. Yep. So it has all these benefits that people kind of miss when in the middle of the argument between, you know, ICE cars and
Yeah.
electric cars.
Well, what do you think? It's actually funny. The more Tesla people I speak to as well, the more Tesla people I find that have a Tesla plus a whole bunch of other fast and fun internal combustion cars.
Yes, that's true. Yeah.
So what drove you to buy a Tesla? I'm just curious. Was it just the tech?
It was very much a tech decision as well, and it's pretty amazing for what it is, to be honest.
Yep.
Like for the money you get, I can beat anything on the road. Like
100%.
the lights, you just go. My family doesn't like it because it's too small, but apart from that, it's a pretty amazing car. But as what you said, I do own other I buy manuals now, and I just want to So I enjoy the clutch, and if you take the clutch away, that makes me very sad.
Yeah, it's like an EV but with noise. That is. I just find that really fascinating because a lot of people put EV owners into the basket of like a Prius owner, where they just want to save the world, and it's like that's not why I bought an EV. I bought an EV because we had a Model 3 Performance initially, and I wanted it to be fast and fun and, like you said, beat anything off the lights. Unless you're in a supercar that is using launch control, it will beat anything.
It'll beat anything.
And when it's using launch control, like if a Lambo was to pull up next to me with launch control and I could hear it, I wouldn't even bother. But I know that if it's not, I've got him. And that to me was important. And I think that people make the mistake of putting EV owners all in that bucket, and to me an EV is more than just that. It's just a fun thing to own. And then on the weekend I got my I like to call them shit boxes because some run, some don't. They make noise, and I go drive them around. So
it does. Like it that people talk about soul and personality, and like I definitely agree. It is a little bit soulless.
Yep.
It is like, as far as tech goes, amazing.
Yep.
You know what I mean? But like I still yearn for cars that I've owned previously. I just did a tour through America, and I had an M3 the whole time.
Nice.
So I did 1,500 miles in it. So it was a lot of driving, and there was a lot of passion in that. So I really enjoyed still connecting with that, and it was a M3 competition, so
nice.
you could get it around the 3,000 revs and hear it popping off at the back. It's just like there's nothing else like it. What I mean?
What do you think? One of the things that I've grown to really dislike is other Tesla owners, especially the evangelists who think that no, it's the best car in the world. It has so much soul. I'm like, it doesn't. Like, it is a really fun car and I love it, but it doesn't have those things that you claim it has.
Yeah.
I find that really overbearing, and I think that is brought on by the Muskism of everyone just sort of being a fan of that. Do you find those people as annoying as I do?
No. I think you're right. I think like there are different attitudes, and I definitely now that I've owned the Tesla for a while, I definitely yearn for previous cars that I've owned. Do you know what I mean? So I do miss the sound and the theatrics of it. Yeah. So
sorry to any Tesla owners listening.
don't say sorry.
I think we should have brought on like a one of those hardcore either Tesla fans or like a Tesla hater to do I'm not sure I'd be able to do that justice.
Funny. I spend a lot of time on Twitter. Whenever I publish anything pro Tesla that is new news, it goes bananas. I get all of this great feedback, lots of followers.
Well, especially now, right?
You
Algorithm
do the
change.
opposite. You do the opposite, and it's like they want to burn you on a pitchfork. And I'm like, just chill out, guys.
Yeah.
Well, we mentioned before that you said something about synthetic fuels, that was a question I was going to ask you. That I see they're investing in potentially carbon neutral fuels, which I think is amazing, and that would keep the ICE engines around for many years to come. So hopefully, do you have any take on that? What's your theories or hopes?
Yeah. Look, as a bit of background, Europe is moving to ban internal combustion sales, both petrol and diesel, by I think 2035. So every manufacturer is racing to do EV stuff. So it's on the horizon that we will see the end of new internal combustion cars. There is a caveat to that, though, and there are some countries in the world where you barely have enough electricity to run lights, let alone charge an EV. And you see then car companies like Toyota being a little hesitant towards EVs because they know that those markets where you're not going to have the electricity that you need are still buyers of affordable cars. And if they can then monopolise the internal combustion car for those markets, they're laughing. Let everyone else do EV stuff. So I think that we will see a good mix of EVs, but then internal combustion cars. And obviously those internal combustion cars need to be supported by some kind of a fuel. And then the good compromise there is synthetic fuels. Porsche has announced that they'll be developing synthetic fuels and also manufacturing them in Australia and in Tasmania. Other brands have also spoken about synthetic fuels and the future of that. And to me, that's important because I own a number of old V8 Commodores and just other random stuff that I still want to be able to drive. I'm not going to drive them daily, but on a weekend, if I want to take it for a drive, I need a fuel to use in them. And what Porsche is saying is the same thing. A lot of their owners own classics and they still want to be able to drive them. So these synthetic fuels will be backwards compatible. And it means that if you own a 911 today, you'll be able to still fuel it using these fuels. And it also means that they will probably be expensive, but we'll be fine with that. Even if it's $10 a litre, it's still something you'll infrequently use. So I think it'll happen eventually, and I'm glad someone's thinking about it. And my only concern is with EVs that we rush towards this future. At the moment, we're seeing huge stock shortages, huge supply issues of critical components, and like the greatest demand ever for lithium and those minerals that are used within an electric vehicle. If you multiply out the sales that we're expecting over the next 10 or 15 years, I don't know how that's going to be sustainable without massive improvements and advancements in battery tech, which have been pretty slow in terms of their forthcoming nature. So it'll be an interesting space to watch at the moment, I think.
Yeah, and the infrastructure as well needs to catch up. I didn't live far from here at the studio, and I didn't have a garage. So I had a plug-in hybrid. And I literally ran a cable across to a tree and down into my car. And neighbours would be like, "Can you even do that?"
Yeah. And you're like, "Don't know."
That's true. Infrastructure is terrible. We recently did a road trip from Adelaide to Sydney. We did it in a Kia EV6, which is an electric Kia, and a diesel Audi Q5. And it was the base model Q5. And I took the slightly inland route to see what the charging infrastructure was like. Basically, once you get off the main freeways, you have old school charging tech. And at one point, because they were doing roadworks on this one bridge that crossed the Murray, there was like a 40k detour each way. And it ended up with me arriving into this small town that we were staying overnight at with like 1 kilometre of range left in the EV. Because as the temperature drops, your battery, you need to use more energy, heat the battery at its optimum temperatures and stuff. And I found the infrastructure in regional Australia is shithouse. And second to that, there was one charger in this town, and I happened to be travelling on a Monday night, but if I had been there on a school holiday or something like that, I could be in a queue of 5 other cars to actually charge my vehicle, which is just entirely stupid. So, and it's expensive as well. Like we ended up looking at the costs of it. It ended up being $5 cheaper to drive the EV than it was the diesel Audi.
Okay.
And if that charger that we stopped at overnight wasn't free, it was the only free one along the trip, it would have been more expensive to run the EV on the public charging network. So yeah, it's great if you can charge at home, and most people do. But if you are doing a road trip, the cost benefit of it currently isn't realised until we see what's going to happen with electricity prices and the cost of rolling all this stuff out.
I will say that outside of long trips, the charging has never been an issue.
Yep.
Like you just plug it in at home and you get in. Like it's never, it's never been an issue. And it's such a talking point. And even when you're traveling, if you have to stop for half an hour, it's really not that big a deal.
And that's all it is. It is literally half an hour, and that's the time I would spend going to the bathroom and getting lunch.
Exactly.
So it's definitely not an issue. And like you said, we charge at home. I don't even think about it. And owning a Tesla is actually the better part of it because their network is amazing in Australia, and their chargers work. A lot of the time with Tritium, which is an Australian company that deploys chargers as well, their chargers are woefully unreliable. And part of the problem is you have companies like ChargeFox that the government partly funds who install a charger, take the government grants and all that sort of stuff, and then when it stops working, they're like, this is someone else's problem. So, yeah.
Have you had a chance to drive the new EVs that are popping up, like the Rivian?
Yeah, so we've driven pretty much everything. The only stuff I haven't driven most recently is the Rivian and the F-150 Lightning.
I was going to ask about that. Yep.
Yeah, they are both coming to Australia at some point, and I can't wait for that to happen because I see a lot of appeal in dual cab utes and EVs. The only problem is with stuff like Lightning, if you use it as a ute and tow,
it doesn't. Yeah.
So I'll be interested to see how that pans out. But just like any other car on the road, most tradies drive a very short amount during the day, or if it is a longer amount, it will be to a site where you stop and then have the ability to charge anyway. So I think it may be less of an issue for utes. Our first electric ute will be a Chinese one that is being released in December. And that is basically the first full EV ute on the market, but it only has a driving range of like 300 Ks.
This is a completely ignorant question, but you might be able to answer. Why did they try and do a gearing system with electric to tow to get better mileage and stuff?
That's a really good question.
Is it? I didn't think it was going to be a
question. I've never thought about that because there's only, I think at the moment, only one other car on the market, the Porsche Taycan that has a two-speed.
Porsche, yep, it has 2-speed, yep.
And the reason for that is if you're on the Autobahn doing 150 and you nail the throttle in any other EV, it is a very casual acceleration. It's not explosive like it is off the line. Whereas with Porsche, their second gear engages at about 80 Ks an hour, and it means you still get explosive acceleration. But they really should do that with utes because ultimately you can have a gearing setup for fast, fun stuff, but then a gearing setup for towing.
Because like, you know, you think like any kind of diesel engine, like it can tow like an immense amount. Based on the gearing, you know what I mean? So
I think from if I put my engineering hat on, and I don't know how true any of this is, but I would need to see what the relation is between motor RPM and current draw, because with electric motors, depending on the type of car it is, they can spin up to like 21,000 RPM. I'm wondering if the more RPM, the more current draw, or if it is just load. Because if it's just load and it could spin at 20,000 RPM, but if you're not towing anything, it wouldn't make a difference if there was another gear. So I will look into that because that is a really good question.
I'm sure that there's a reason for it, and
we could sell that idea to Elon.
Yeah, 100%. Do you think we'd lose some of our street cred if we rocked up with our E85 BRZ drift car towed by an EV?
Actually, one of the first most exciting videos I ever saw was Top Gear did a video of the Model X racing against the Alpha 4C.
Oh yes,
but the Model X was towing an Alpha 4C, and I'm just like, that is ridiculous.
Yes, that was Motor Trend. I remember that. It was at a drag strip as well. That was an awesome video. I thought that was really
and just
clever.
the way the camera did the
camera work was so genius. That's what I love. I miss what Top Gear used to do, which was those fun videos, because when they moved to Amazon, I just stopped watching it because they were clearly having to meet revenue targets and do stuff for the wrong reasons. Whereas with Top Gear, it was them stuffing around. It was the BBC's money. They didn't really care. Now the new Top Gear, I don't even watch that. I just don't find any of that stuff interesting anymore. And perhaps maybe it's the same with you guys and other games on the market. You just don't get excited because you're in that space. You don't look at other people's stuff as much, or from a fun point of view. It's more a critical point of view. So for 100%. Me, I've kind of just stopped being interested in that. So maybe I'm unique in that sense. But I just think interesting car stuff has vanished. Now with YouTube becoming so easy for anyone to film stuff, it's now the domain of the psycho YouTube people. So the people who buy a Ram TRX and go, okay, I'm going to go jump this so that I can get 10 million views on YouTube. I think we've moved away from interesting car videos to just sensationalist stuff to get clicks.
That Tesla that launched in San Diego. He's being sued at the moment, but he made it.
So did they find out the person? It was a rented car, and I wasn't sure if they actually found the guy.
I think that, it was a rented car, but I just think regardless of what that person's got to pay, they've made it on the video. Not that we're
that's the problem. YouTube lets you do that stuff, and I'm like, well, if it's in public like that and it is actually highly dangerous, that stuff goes viral because it's interesting. People want to see it, and it gets to the point where people just end up doing dumb stuff that is dangerous that could hurt someone, and it's only going to be a matter of time before someone trying to do a stunt ends up badly hurting an innocent person.
But they'll get lots of views.
Views and revenue.
Go down in flames.
It's actually one of the things I wanted to dive in deeper. Around how the industry has changed, like the journalism around vehicles and the social media channels and the TikToks and the Reels and the YouTube. You've been doing it for such a long time, and I imagine that's something you can look back on, your personal experience.
Yeah, look, when we were in the very early days of Car Advice, all of our competitors published newspapers. So they were publishing all of their stuff in print. And what would happen is we would go to a car launch, and a car launch is where they show us a car, we drive it for the first time. And typically what would happen is it would get published in a newspaper on, let's say, a Thursday morning. What we would do is race back to the office, take our own photos and publish it online immediately. And as we started doing this more and more, we started getting all of the SEO traffic, and we were gaming that system by taking advantage of all the SEO juice we could get. So that's how we grew really quickly. Legacy publishers then got on board with this and started pushing stuff to the internet much faster. And as a result of that, the industry was forced to enact embargoes. So embargoes prevented you from publishing anything until a certain time, and that was so that your legacy publishers could get stuff printed as well. What changed from that point was YouTube and video. And if you look, when we started doing our first videos like 15, 16 years ago, when I go and play them, they're highly embarrassing because they're just the shittest things you've ever seen. But back then it was all about video quality and production quality. Now, fast forwarding to today, it's all about publishing online first. It is about video that isn't about quality. When we started our channel 2.5 years ago, we were the first to do 4K in Australia, and consistently with all of our videos. That became the norm for us. All of our content is shot on a consumer grade camera. We don't go big Sony FS7s and all the stuff that we used to use. So we keep it simple so that we can actually be efficient. And where we used to take an entire day to film one car review, we're now able to film 2 car reviews within 6 or 7 hours because we can package it all down. The other thing we changed as well was going down the path of a single presenter. So a lot of our competitors still use a cast of thousands. And I use the example of like the Today Show or Sunrise. If you tune in to watch Carl and whoever his co-host is, and each day Carl is some other person, you're going to go, I'm not going to watch this because I don't gel with that person. Whereas with YouTube, if you gel with the presenter, they can have their off days and do stuff that you may not like, but you gel with them and you become one with them effectively. So that has worked really well for us in terms of growing that coverage. And then the short form video is the thing that has exploded recently. With the advent of TikTok, Facebook and Instagram are now pushing Reels incredibly hard. So with TikTok, I posted a video of the new BMW i7. It was a quick walk around. It was 1 minute long. It has 6 million views. It went crazy. And now Facebook and Instagram are realizing that creators are getting more value out of interaction and engagement through TikTok. And Facebook and Instagram have started pushing Reels even harder now as well. So at the moment, it's a great time to be a creator because if you can actually create short form video content that pushes people onto longer form video content that you can monetize, it is then a much better environment for you to be in. But the industry in general has changed to the point now where anybody can be a journalist. Previously, it was a very closed select group. Now you will have someone who runs, a blog that they created yesterday, getting cars to talk about. So yeah, it is really fascinating how it's all come around.
Yeah, no, I mean, we're just recently really pushing the marketing and media generation of around because I think it's really interesting. When we make games, you can just release it and then you get feedback and then you're like, okay, we'll change some stuff. But I think it's super interesting being able to bring everybody behind the scenes, create content and be like, this is actually how it's made, that you can be part of how we make it and get the feedback and also just because we like cars and we do drifting and it's I don't know, someone might like that.
That's authenticity, right? That is you guys being authentic. Genuine. Yeah. And to me, I will much rather go download and pay for a game when I get to know how it's done. I know that it's done in Australia, and to me, that's important. So, I think that is definitely the right thing to be doing, and just embracing, failing fast is so good because we would much prefer to break something on the website and then fix it once someone has emailed us than we would waiting 6 months to fine tune it and have it tested by 1,000 other people. Obviously, it's a bit different if you're launching a game to this global audience and it needs to work day one. But if you're making running changes based on feedback from users, if it doesn't work, you just fix it and then just move on with it. No one cares as long as you listen to their feedback and get it sorted. It's as simple as that.
Yeah. Most of the people who email us don't expect a reply.
It's so weird. Their tone changes. Yes. So it starts off quite aggressive and a little bit upset. and then you respond, and then all of a sudden they become nice. I'm just like, is this the same person?
Like overly nice sometimes.
Yeah.
I had some.
They're shocked.
This example of someone you were like, this person is going to start sending stuff to our doorstop, and then we reply, and then they're like, I feel so bad. I've purchased a few things because and we're like,
so funny.
We're like, this is part of the interaction. We help you out.
I love that. But that's great, and you learn from that interaction because. Yeah, most people just don't expect a reply. They think, okay, you've taken my money. I'm never going to hear from you. I'm pissed off. Here's my thing. And then when you reply, they're like, oh, there is a human that's listening and fixing my problem. They love it. And that's how you build someone that then recommends you to someone else. Like they're like, these are actually real people doing real things. Yeah.
I also, I'm very aware that if people respond, they care. Do you know what I mean? Like if they really didn't care, they wouldn't even bother writing a comment.
Exactly.
Do you know what I mean? So if it's someone who writes a bit of a blurb about, why they're upset, it's because they want it to be good. You know what I mean? So you can obviously take it however you want to, but I think it's really important to understand. Yeah, if they didn't care, they just wouldn't write anything.
Yeah, I mean, do you think anyone emails like Rockstar Games about a glitch in Grand Theft Auto? No, I wouldn't even bother because I know that no one. And this is probably showing my ignorance. I think Rockstar Games does Grand Theft Auto, but
no, you're
good. Okay, excellent. I knew that. But yeah, I would never email them because I'm like, no one's going to reply. It'll be an auto reply or some stupid bot, and no one will ever see it. Whereas with you guys. Like you said, you care enough to email and you don't think you're getting a response, but when you do, it's like a happy thing to have. And I think that treating, one of the things that I found very hard to start with, especially on YouTube, is dealing with commenters because commenters are vicious. And for me, I clearly have no style. And when you stand in front of a camera and someone tells you that you look fat or something like that, I'm like, yeah, okay. I look fat. I don't give a fuck. Like it is just what it is.
Like and subscribe.
Yeah, but I actually just sometimes reply thanks for the view because it is critical as you want. But now I realise that these are probably just insecure teenagers on school holiday, and what they say does not bother me. And what we found is once you build a community, before I even get a chance to respond,
someone else. Yeah.
I'm like, that is what it's about.
Yeah, that's what you want. You're like a little army comes.
Not always adhering to the company's like code of ethics, but
that's fine. I didn't see that comment, so it's fine.
Yeah. Have you always been comfortable on camera and speaking, or
not really? And it's something that I realised that you just have to. Just be yourself. And early on, when I look at the earlier videos, the reason I say they were cringy is because I was trying to be Jeremy Clarkson, and there is no point doing that because there is one Jeremy Clarkson. So you just have to go with who you are. If people like it, great. If they don't, well, bad luck. You just don't be fake. Like I get pitched so much to endorse products, and I'm like, if I don't actually like this product and don't use it myself, I'm not interested in endorsing it. So yeah, for me, it's just about being yourself, and I think that is the most important part. Yeah,
I've got a little note here: fast cars and fuck ups. So I want to loop this back into your kind of history and story, because I imagine this book is it out yet?
No, it's not out yet. So there was a couple of legal issues, and that's been the story of our existence. It was so funny when we first. Had a placeholder on the CarExpert website before anything was launched, before we even told anyone about anything. We literally had a logo that we threw together, and it had a shade of colour in it, and the colour was from one of our competitors. Not even remotely the same colour, but it was a similar tinge to theirs. And we got a legal letter, a cease and desist. Wow. And I'm like, are these guys actually serious?
It's like a Cadbury move.
Yeah, it's not even our real logo. And I was like, that is hilarious. Since then, we have received so many legal letters from our competitors. And it was funny because they initially thought we weren't going to succeed at all. When we published an update recently saying that we're reaching a sort of a run rate of 10 mil of revenue per year, which, depending on what kind of business you're in, may not be that much. But for us as a publisher, we're currently a third of the size that we were at Car Advice after 15 years, which is an incredible achievement in such a short amount of time. They're now taking us seriously, so the legal letters that we get now are a little more serious. So with the book, I mean, the book it's more about our previous stuff at Car Advice. What I think is going to happen though, once we do what we're going to do with CarExpert, we really want to I know this sounds bad, but expose the industry and explain to people how everything works. Because at the moment, we're a bit hamstrung in terms of what we can and can't say. You have to please certain people, and what we say is genuine, but we really want to, I guess, blow the lid on how it all works, and that's going to be an extension of that book as well. So we've learned a lot from all this stuff, and I think that the second time around now, we have learned even more again. So if we do any stuff in the future, and when we do have plans to do stuff in the future, it's going to really encompass everything that we've learned to date, which is failed a lot. So you got to take all that stuff and put it into practice. Yeah.
Do you have some examples of these failures? Is these fail fast and
So there's a couple of really good ones. So with the equity thing, I mentioned earlier that we love giving early cornerstone employees equity, but be careful with how generous you are with your equity. And the second part of that is trusting your gut. Every single bad decision we've made in the past has been due to knowing it's a bad decision, but going with someone else's opinion on it. And a good example was at one of the capital raises we did, we agreed with someone influential in our business that we needed to reduce the valuation because we were running out of people to talk to about the business. Had we have listened to our gut and realised that we were heading down the trajectory that we were heading on, we would have kept the valuation, which would have been 20 or 30% higher than what we ended up settling on. And we would have known that the stuff that we had coming online in the next month or two would have helped pave the way to this higher valuation. So trusting your gut is the most important thing. And anything someone tells you, don't listen to them just because they're telling you. If it doesn't feel right to you, don't run with that. And that followed on to that discussion about equity and giving up too much equity early. You don't get that stuff back. The second it's gone. You can never claw it back. And when you make a bad deal on equity, it ends up hurting you in the long run, because if your business ends up being worth a stack of money and you've diluted the absolute crap out of yourself, you'll never earn that back and you'll end up regretting it.
You can only slice a pie so many times. So yeah, exactly. I think that the equity thing is interesting because it's like I've always tried to run a business where it is very open, and I want to try and get people involved. But then it raises other issues where it's like, what if someone leaves? Do you know what I mean? It's like you want everyone invested, and then but everyone has the right to choose their own life, and so that it opens up a whole bunch of other issues that come with offering that kind of stuff.
Yeah, that's the problem. And look, we got around that by vesting it over a 36-month period. So it was a monthly vesting profile with the first tranche coming after 12 months. So it limits people leaving. Then we also introduced good leaver and bad leaver clauses, because over time we have learned that some of the people that you hire are not right for the business. And back to that gut thing, we had one particular guy who was very toxic in our business, and we knew we had to get rid of him, but we were worried about replacing his role and understanding how pivotal his particular role and not necessarily him was to the business. When we finally pulled the trigger on him, not only did we realise we should have done that 6 months earlier, we lost 6 months worth of equity during that process because he wasn't eligible for a bad leaver. So it really just comes back to just recognising that you need to do what you need to do at the time, and the problems that present themselves when you have to get rid of someone fix themselves pretty quickly after that, because you're forced to then make a change. When someone is in that position, you're not really forced to replace them, whereas when they're gone and that person is pivotal around a certain part of the business, you have to replace them. And it just comes back to that discussion about the gut feel. You just have to act on it, and the equity's the same. Like you want people to be invested in the business, but you realise pretty quickly some people don't deserve equity. And we're thinking about adopting this rule that Google has, where if you haven't been promoted within 2 years, you're basically gone. Because if someone is so comfortable that they haven't changed anything in their role within 2 years, they're unlikely to ever want to. And a casual employee who has no ambition to improve or succeed is one that isn't helping the team and isn't worthy of the equity position that you've given them.
That's deep.
So it is. Yeah. So hopefully no one listening to this that works for us has been there for 2 years and hasn't been promoted. But it's just that philosophy of just making sure people still want to be there. You don't want someone that's comfortable. A comfortable person is the worst person to have.
This is an interesting chat. We're
we're
exploring
covering
cars, we like content, media, and then business, books, and this is crazy. Okay, let's
bad lever clauses.
let's shift back to cars. Let's shift gears back to cars. So I have a question here. So your first car, your favorite car, and your forever car. So if you could have a think about it, be interesting to know what you say.
Okay, so first car was a Toyota Camry V6. Funny thing about the first car was that I drove it for about 2 days before I got my first press car. And since turning 18, I have literally had someone else's car till now when I'm 36 or 35, however old I am now. I've always had someone else's car. So I changed that philosophy a little bit recently when I just started buying cars for my wife and for me to have fun in it, but I rarely drive them because we're always in work cars. Favorite car? That's a tough one. Favorite car is actually probably going to be very close to. Actually, no. Favorite car at the moment is the Ford Ranger Raptor.
Oh, sweet.
So
nice.
I just bought one of those, and when I was embedded in what Ford calls the inner circle. It's a very weird name, but it was basically a group of journalists that were involved very early on in the development process for the new Ranger. So we were part of development drives and other sort of confidential stuff that is now open. But when I got my first taste in the car, I was like, oh my God, this thing is unreal. And then when we finally had a chance to test drive it, I'm like, this is the perfect car because it does jumps. It's engineered to do jumps. It has a twin turbo V6 petrol engine. It sounds cool. It drifts, even if it's dry, which you normally don't do. And it's just this beast of a thing. And I'm like, okay, I have to have this car. So that's my favorite. My forever car would be one that I drove in my sort of final days of car advice when Holden was wrapping up in Australia, and it's the HSV GTSR W1. We got to drive that car over a 3-day period, and not even kidding, I think I spent every daylight hour in that car because it was just this piece of Australian history that wouldn't exist anymore. They literally got the final batch of LS9 engines ever created and allocated them to this production run of HSVs. I then had the opportunity to drive one of 4 W1 utes that they made. And it was bought by a friend of mine, Adrian, who runs LMCT, which is like a car raffle thing.
Oh, yeah.
And he flexed and bought this thing for $1 million. And I said to him, look, it would mean the world to me if I could drive this. And he's like, yeah, no drums. And I was like, okay. So we drove it. We did a review on it, and it was unreal. So they're my 3 staples.
The Raptor's interesting, very interesting, because like I had a Wild Track.
Yep.
I had it and sold it the shortest period of time. I think
it was a record.
Months.
It was a record.
It was a record, and my wife's like, she's just shaking her head at me because I just didn't like the engine.
Yep.
I just didn't enjoy it. But the Raptor, particularly that they come out with the twin turbo, the V6, that I'm like, I would be interested to.
You need to drive it because to me, like my wife always asks me, why did you buy it? And she can apply that question to anything that I bought. I actually imported a Humvee from the States, so like a former military vehicle.
Wow.
I have zero use for it. But with what's happening in the world, I might be everyone's best friend. And same with the Raptor. I don't need to tow anything. I don't need to put anything in the tray. I don't need to go off-road. But I just love the idea that it exists. And I love that Australian engineers worked on it and there's a story behind it. And it was the whole reason I bought the Model 3 Performance initially. I went to the unveiling of the car in Fremont, and I really gelled with that. We interviewed Elon Musk at the time when he wasn't a massive douchebag. That's kind of adjusted now. So to me, that was why I sort of had that. And then the Supra was the same. I bought that because I like the engineering story behind it, and I really sort of gelled with how it all came together. So to me, buying a car, there's a reason why I buy it. And we spoke about your Z earlier, like owning the last manual performance car. And you mentioned it's not about the money. And to me, it's the same. Like I don't buy stuff because I hope that it appreciates. It's because I want to enjoy it. And one day that car will serve a purpose beyond just being a thing that exists, you know?
Yeah, like it is a funny thing to describe. And and I said to you, it's not about the money. It's really about just having something that is like a moment of history that potentially, like, I would love, in 20 years' time when I'm getting older and I could go to like a car meet and I have, like one of the last Cs, I think that would just be amazing. And, I'm a huge fan of JDMs. So I think that is just, I'm forward thinking about how I will see that car in the future.
Yeah, that's the way to do it. And I think if you're buying a car as an investment, it's the wrong reason to buy it. A lot of people were burned with classic Australian cars over the past 12 months. They peaked 12 to 18 months ago. Some people were taking out loans to buy these things that they thought were going to go through the roof. That market has now, it's on its way to crashing, and people are holding these cars that will never be worth what they paid for them. And the problem was at the time, people were buying them through auction houses who didn't do finance. So they were taking out mortgages. Interest rates have now gone through the roof. So you're in this position now where you've got these people with dead assets on their hands. So buying a car for the sole purpose of investment, I think, is always a bad idea. You have to want it and want it for a reason. That way you're not disappointed if it doesn't work out, because you don't want to bet your life on this piece of metal.
Yeah. Tell us about the Supra more. Did you get it sideways?
Oh, yeah, I did. So I actually bought the car and immediately fit a set of Advans to it with these.
Is it a Mark IV?
Yeah, it was a
A80.
90, whatever it was called. So the BMW one. And I just thought it was such a fun car. Did a couple of track days in it and that sort of stuff. Ended up selling it because I just didn't need it. And it ended up being bought by this 18-year-old. It was actually a 17-year-old student his parents bought for it. When they rocked up to have a look at the car, I'm like, this guy looks like he's 12. And he took it for a test drive with his mum. And the dad was like, oh, yeah, I'm very proud of him. He's just finishing year 12. And I'm so confused. And I'm like, as long as you pay, I don't really care. So he bought the car and I'm like, this is your problem now. But that thing's awesome. And what I love just about drifting in general is it actually, I'm not saying driving a car around a racetrack doesn't require skill. It does. Drifting is like a very different sport. It requires a different set of skills, and I just find it more interesting than driving a car around a track. Like, driving a car around a track is just like, you just go around the track, you do your stuff, whereas drifting is like, it's highly dynamic. The weather conditions adjust everything that you do. It's just fun.
It's loose fun. I just loved just shredding tires. It's a very exciting.
How do you stop shredding tires? Because that's one of the issues I have whenever all of our videos we shoot at the old Holden Proving Ground at Lang Lang, and unless it's wet, if I do anything silly for longer than 2 minutes,
done.
I look under the back and I'm like, oh, okay.
We just swap tires. We just rack them up.
What about tire pressures? Is it important to have higher tire pressures?
Absolutely. Higher if you're beginning, if you're learning. Obviously lower if you want more grip. So in FD, they're running extremely low pressure. They just want as much grip as possible. Yeah.
So interesting.
And they're just getting so much speed. So yeah.
Okay. See, I'm not at that level of confidence because they're not my cars. So typically I'll wait for it to be wet so that I can have a bit of fun with it. But yeah, I'm at the level where I enjoy doing it in a safe environment the thought of having lots and lots of speed scares the shit out of me.
It's like when you say you need skill, it's where you really need balls. That's
That's like, it's like a rally driver. I find rally drivers are very different to just typical race drivers because you have to have balls and you have to be willing to do something that sounds like a very bad idea at the time.
You like trust. Yeah, you got to trust your gut in those situations too.
Exactly, 100%. Well, tell me, how is the NFT space changing in cars? Because I have kind of been involved in it. I love crypto, and a lot of people publicly, my co-founder Albors thinks I'm an idiot for investing in crypto and NFTs and stuff because he's simple and doesn't understand it. But with NFTs, you guys are kind of leveraging that in the gaming world. Do you think where do you think NFTs will be in like 5-10 years time?
I think digital ownership is just gonna, like, the word NFT. It has some bad connotations and there's some negativity around it. I think in the end, the tech will win. I think the people, the players will love what it opens up for them. I think once we sort out the onboarding and making the barriers of entry less,
user experience,
experience. I think like when free to play gaming first came out, there was a lot of negativity around that. Even when the internet first hit, I think there was a lot of scams going around. I think in the end, the tech is super amazing, and I think people will love it.
Well, how do you solve the onboarding thing? Because that, to me, getting into crypto was the hardest thing. Understanding how blockchain works, understanding how to secure.
You shouldn't have to worry about it, to be honest.
That's what I'm thinking.
And the less you make them worry about it, the better. So I think the systems, the tools, the infrastructure around it.
I think it just comes down to making the products better and the use cases. Like there's been a number of really they're incredible moves, but they've been super under the radar because like Reddit launched the NFT digital assets. Sorry, Reddit digital assets on their platform, and there's millions of people enjoying those, like with not worrying about it. Like Starbucks is running a loyalty program; they're doing that on a blockchain. So it's like I think trying to sell it as a blockchain or NFT use case is just kind of like enhancing the things that people already want to use with the extra
blockchain benefit. Does the actual network matter? Because to me, when I was looking into it, there was pretty much everything was on Ethereum, and then it kind of chopped and changed a little. Do you think that the actual network that you're on makes a difference?
It does, absolutely. So we do everything in Polygon. So that's it's a very low transaction fee, and it's much faster. So yeah,
because that's the biggest thing with Ethereum. It's recently with the merge, it's helped with gas fees and stuff. But at the peak of NFTs, you were paying like $200 in gas fees for some NFTs and transactions, and it's like, this is just ridiculous, absolutely ridiculous. So and most recently, securing your assets and stuff has been important too. But like you said, once the products are there, it will all happen naturally around it. Because I was involved not involved, but I purchased a whole bunch of Hyundai NFTs. So they ran their own NFT, and I mentioned to you guys earlier that when they released it, I'm like, okay, it's a car company. So obviously when they release what these NFTs look like, it will be a car. It ended up being a moon buggy of some sort. So I then ended up meeting the guy that created that project, and after talking to him for a little while, I could see exactly why it didn't work out the way that they were hoping it would. I think if a car company does this stuff, they need to do it properly and dive right into it instead of doing like a half-ass thing.
I mean, respecting the IP and doing that justice and like creating something of value is just something like, there's a lot of bad use cases out there. I think there's no shortage of people doing things that are like, let's just do another round of images, like 10,000 images. Yeah. It's been done, and there's lots of room for innovation, and hopefully we're doing lots of unique and interesting things. Yes. Maybe they all won't work out, but I think a lot of them will.
Failing fast, that's the whole point. Whatever doesn't work, you blitz and you start from scratch. You do whatever you need to do, but I think now is a great time to be really building on NFT and the crypto space, because it will happen eventually. Like the whole concept of a blockchain and decentralization has so many excellent use purposes.
Absolutely.
Governments are realizing that now as well. They're all actually getting on board and doing things to make it work. Some not great, such as taxing the shit out of crypto and making life hard when it comes to tax time, but that's okay.
Yeah, that's future Billy's problem.
Exactly.
When tax comes around, I'm like, where did all my transactions come from?
Oh my God, it is the worst.
It'll get better. Yeah, like the other thing of, which is a very valid criticism, is like not everyone wants to become their own bank. It's like 100%, but there's things being developed like multi-sig wallets, but then you got to rely on your friends still being friends when you want to like get your money out or recover your wallet. But these things I think can be overcome, and it doesn't have to be for everyone too. So it's
and that as well. Yeah, there are so many things out there that might not be for me, it might not be for you, and that's that. But I think in the gaming space, people are tech savvy enough to be able to get on board with it, and I think that it will evolve into something really cool. So I'm looking forward to seeing sort of where it all actually ventures and heads out.
Yeah. Well, we showed you a snippet earlier, so yeah.
Well, I love the look of it. I think what you guys are doing there is cool. It gives me. I grew up as well, in addition to all those other games, with Need for Speed and Tokyo Drift was heaps of fun. Like those car games were really fun to me, and then GTA. And I think that looking at what you guys are doing, it really has that high quality vibe to it. A lot of game makers went down the path of just cheap and cheerful and just pumping stuff out that didn't really look that good. I think it's important to really have everything encapsulated into it. Then you bring the tech on top as well.
Yeah, You play many games yourself? You see you playing Torque Burnout, our first game.
I was.
Was that recently or
it was all ages ago. So I used to play it heaps. I used to travel a lot. I still travel a lot, but used to travel heaps, and I used to play it on the plane. It was heaps of fun. So when I had an iPhone, early days, I'd play that. And then now, though, we have a daughter. She's 18 months old, so just having a chance to watch television for more than 10 minutes is great, let alone a computer game of any description. So I would like to get back into gaming, but it's just time. It's impossible.
Yeah.
How do you guys do it?
Not enough time.
We don't do it. There is no time. No. There's no time to do anything. You said earlier, this is our industry, and I play games differently. So is from a critical point.
So you're looking at flaws, and you're like,
and just trying to analyze how they made it, and which is a little bit sad, to be honest, because I really should play the games as
absolutely
for fun.
Yeah, I just don't derive joy out of it, and it is it's the same thing with me in cars. It's just, unfortunately, knowing what I know about the car industry, a lot of cars are just the same thing. Like, I turned up today in one of our press cars. It's a Volkswagen T-Roc. I sit in that, and it is the same interior as every other Volkswagen, Skoda, whatever product. It drives the same way, but to the consumer, it is a T-Roc, and I love it for these features. But to me, I know the platform it underpins and all the other stuff around it, and I just don't find it anywhere near as interesting as I would if I was just anyone else. So maybe one day later on, when we finish this business, I'll get back into enjoying it. But
do you have any spicy takes on the car industry?
Look, I just think we're heading towards that soulless future, and even now I can see that there are going.
That's pretty hard.
Yeah, for the car enthusiast, it's a dangerous time, because I think Tesla's proven you can make a car fast in a straight line, but like, we drove recently a Mercedes-Benz EQS SUV. We did the launch in Denver. That weighs 2.9 tons.
Jesus.
It is an absolute boat, and it is because they've crammed these enormous batteries into it, and I just did not connect with the car whatsoever. You look at the new C63, it is like a tiny 4-cylinder petrol with all this electronics. It's got like 400 kilos worth of EV equipment on it. And I'm like, that is not the C63 we know today, which is this twin-turbo V8, like, tyre destroyer. So I think we are heading to a future where manufacturers are going to have to compromise, and we're going to be stuck with cars that perhaps we don't find all that interesting. So that's hold on to your classics, I say.
Yeah, don't sell anything. We said that the other podcast. Don't sell any car.
Just keep every single car. Yeah.
But it's like the room we're in now with all these consoles and other cool sort of electronics. There would have been a time when that 32-bit Game Boy would have been old, and you go, I'm just going to throw that away.
Yeah.
Don't be a hoarder, but also just keep some of this stuff, because you will look back on it and go, oh my God, this is so cool to still have this piece of history that I didn't throw out because of it being old.
Nostalgia is wonderful. It's an absolute kick. So, yeah.
Like, you'll never play any of the... Oh, you might, but you're probably not going to play any of this stuff.
I have a staff member that tells me off all the time. He's like, he's saying I'm a fraud because I have all this stuff, but I don't play it. Yeah.
But that's the thing. It's just cool to have it and to know that this was a part of history. This led to this other stuff being developed and us being here today where we have this device.
It's totally who I am. Do you know what I mean? Like, when I was a kid and I played these games, and I remember making board games as well when I was a kid and stuff. I remember this stuff, and it resonates a lot, and we get little snippets, little memories, which I love.
Yeah, bloody oath.
Yeah.
Well, Paul, it's been an absolute pleasure to have you on the show, and
thank you.
Well, we'll have you on again when we're the podcast's blown up and
definitely
and the game's out. And
when the game's out, I definitely want to have a crack in that, and I can do that during work hours, so it'll be a work related thing. So please keep me
cool. It's been a pleasure to meet you. I've been watching your videos for many years, so it's great to put a face to the actual.
And where can everyone kind of follow you? And
look, I'm on all the social channels. Just search for me, Paul Maric, Maric, or Maric if you don't want to be racist. You're not racist if you say Maric. Find me on all those social channels. And just a quick note, I didn't buy any of my own followers. So when you find me on social, the 6 million views are actually people. So
sounds like something someone would say who used to run. No, it's great.
Cool.
Awesome. Thank you, guys.
Thanks, everyone.